The Steelers roll into Baltimore at 6-0. They have that big shootout overtime victory over Tennessee. Tennessee had a nice comeback attempt, but Steelers eked it out, and it was a big win for them. So the question here, obviously, with Baltimore at 5-1, they've looked spotty at times, but overall pretty solid. Is this the week that the Steelers fall and the last unbeaten is done?
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, it's a toss-up for me because they both have great defenses. Steelers obviously the best in the league right now. Unless you have something to say about that.
I got nothing to say about that.
Yeah.
You could argue the Colts, but probably not.
I think the only way Baltimore is going to win the game is if they just out-defense the Steelers, which I think could happen, but it's going to be hard to do because, obviously, best defense in the league. But I think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be I don't even know if we can watch it, actually, because it's a 1 p.m. game.
Yeah.
I tell you, scheduling is off this year.
It is, man. This is the week they fall for me. Look, Pittsburgh's been great. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But that defense, in terms of points allowed, actually isn't as elite as we think. I mean, the Titans torched them. The Eagles torched them. There have been multiple teams that put up big numbers against them, and the Steelers won those games with their offense. And yes, the Steelers defense is great at racking up pressure. They've got a solid secondary, but a team like the Ravens could exploit them. For me, what I think the difference is going to be is the fact that the Ravens are coming off that bye week. They did barely eke that one out over Philadelphia 2 weeks ago, but they've had so much time to prepare for Mike Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin last week was totally preoccupied with the Titans team that was also undefeated. So I think it's a quicker turnaround for Pittsburgh. I think Baltimore's really been ready for this. Pittsburgh with Big Ben on offense has been good, but Big Ben himself, especially late in games, has looked a bit shaky. He's really benefited from having James Conner and a great receiving core.
Biased.
I'm not biased at all.
He's mad at Big Ben because he put him in fantasy all the time.
And well, that's not why, actually. I just genuinely don't think Big Ben's the reason why the Steelers are winning games. I think it's the defense, and I think it's the great weapons he has around him. Big Ben's still a great quarterback, but for me, it comes down to the fact that the Ravens' defense is one of the best defenses the Steelers have faced all year, if not the best. Then you factor in that Lamar Jackson is a matchup nightmare for anybody he faces. He's had 2 weeks to prepare for the Steelers' defense. They also are missing Devin Bush, and that takes away a great spy they could have on him. It's just a lot of factors that go into Baltimore pulling this one out at home for me. Joe, you have anything you want to say to respond to that?
No, I'm good.
And then that goes into the next question, Joe. Do you think the Steelers will be able to contain Lamar appropriately without Devin Bush? I mean, you know my take. I just kind of gave it, but
yeah, I think they could. Look, all due respect, Mr. Jackson. If you're not having a good game throwing or running, you're gonna lose. You got to be good at both right now, and honestly, you've lost the games that you failed at one or the other. Because I can't remember the last game you won without rushing for 100 and passing for over 100. Or, I mean, I can't remember. But never mind, I'm not going to say what I'm thinking. But I do think he can be contained by the Steelers' defense. It's going to be challenging because Lamar is a dual-threat quarterback, obviously. He can run the ball, so making him kind of a running back, but he doesn't like that word. But it's definitely doable, and that's why I kind of think the Steelers are going to win this week.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, look,
and if they do it, it's a surefire way. It's a surefire win.
Yeah, I mean, for me, look, I bash on the Steelers defense a little. That Steelers defense is the best in football.
Yeah.
The last few, I mean, look, they held the Browns to 7 points, and the Browns, there are questions over whether they're for real or not, but the offense has had its moments, and they looked unbelievably abysmal against that Steelers defense. Also, look, 24 points for the Titans. The only reason why I even give the Steelers a remote bit of flack is because they didn't close out that game. They allowed a lot of points late to let the Titans back into the game, and in the Philly game, you allow 29 points, especially late. I think the Steelers defense especially gets off to great starts, but sometimes they kind of take their foot off the gas in the second half. That cannot happen today against Lamar. I do think tomorrow against Lamar, or Sunday against Lamar. Joe, we don't know time. Daylight savings is messing with us, but I do think that without Devin Bush, they will have a harder time containing Lamar. I think it's very possible to contain Lamar, but I do think that Lamar Jackson, with 2 weeks to prepare, with weapons that are still decent, I think he will have enough of a push to be able to at least wreak havoc on the ground. In the air might be a different question, especially if Hollywood gets double coverage. So we talked a lot about the NFL today, and the last subject we want to touch on here is actually about Lamar Jackson. Joe, you've had hot takes on this all season, and just judging from these performances you've seen from Lamar Jackson, there's obviously been a drop-off since last season. Do you think that he's overrated?
Yeah, I do. I think people still putting him in the MVP discussion. That's just the definition of being overrated because he's not in the MVP discussion anymore. I would say he got out of it after his second horrible performance. But he's still a good player. I'll give him credit where credit is due. He is great at what he does. He has had elite games. He's just starting to become a bit too inconsistent for me. And that's fine because when he's inconsistent, he still wins games most of the time. But when people just hype up Lamar, they're he's a great passer, great rusher. He's not the best passer, and rushing, he's the best quarterback at rushing. But if that's all you got, then he's overrated.
I actually agree with you. I'm looking at the stats right now, Joe. He's only thrown for over 200 yards twice, and those were in the first 2 weeks. He's only thrown for more than 2 touchdowns once. That was in week 1. And he's only rushed for over 100 yards once, and that was last week against Philadelphia. And I think he had a big touchdown run he peeled off in that game.
Yeah.
It's hard, right? Because obviously we are comparing him to the expectations he set for us last season. And last season he was tremendous. But I do agree, Joe. I think when he comes up against a good defense, like Pittsburgh potentially, it could be very difficult for him, especially because he has really struggled to impose his will consistently in both the ground and in the air simultaneously in any game this season, besides maybe the first couple. So, yeah, I do agree with you. I think based on the expectations we have set for him from last season, I don't think he's met them. And do I think that this could be a game where he proves this all wrong and goes off? Absolutely. I mean, Pittsburgh's a great defense, but Lamar Jackson has the assets and the matchup nightmare ability to exploit anyone. For me, though, I do agree with you. He's not in the MVP debate. He shouldn't be in the MVP debate. The man hasn't thrown for over 200 yards since week 2. And, factually speaking, there are so many other quarterbacks out there that have been significantly more consistent and better. And when he played the Chiefs, didn't even throw for 100 yards, didn't rush for more than 90. It was not a good performance. So this is going to be a real defining game. Maybe he can play his way into the hunt, but he is not
Trace
going to
McSorley in. Come on. Come on. It's his time to shine.
And he goes for the
Trace
TikTok
can
game.
actually just throw the ball all the time. He doesn't need to run it because he's a great passer, obviously.